people with us to get it done since 2007 is actually the better of the parts of the architecture as we now have it. Anyway, we've gone through a bunch of steps, and you can see now that what we have in progress is identifying critical operations, identifying PA systems and their associated applications. That second bullet down there in phase 6, much of which is going to come out of this scrub I just talked about a few minutes ago, that's being driven by our appropriations cut that's coming. And so we'll use it for that purpose, for both purposes. And then, you know, to take a broader view as we go forward of all these initiatives across the park. I think I've sort of covered that. Let me keep going here. So I mentioned the identity management and access control lockdown. We get this in our data center, again with agreement, broad-based agreement on approach, artifacts, ground truth being peers with respect to identifying the service member and veteran. Our security plan is now undergoing a refresh right now, and hopefully we'll have that published either this month or next. And then we're taking a look at what those critical functions and systems are, much of which now for the next 3 months we're going to derive from this financially driven activity. But so those will actually feed each other. And you can just see down the side there what are the activities in our cybersecurity program, which I won't belabor here. Here you see, I'm going to talk a little bit about this 360,000 desktops in a minute. An important part of what we've now been able to do, because we're a single enterprise, VA, single IT enterprise, and we have the command and control structure in order to do this. We now have implemented tools, Big Fix being one of them, to establish visibility for us all the way down to the desktop. That's 360,000 desktops. So we now can tell what's running out there. You can see an example of that in a minute. We don't quite have all the data on the utilization of what is running. That's yet another step forward, but we can tell what is running, who has what version, all that kind of stuff on which desktop. And so from a vulnerability perspective, that obviously becomes very useful. However, from a finance and accounting perspective, that also has become very useful when we start here in the next few weeks identifying how much variation there is out there by category or product, and how much of that variation is necessary, how much of that variation is not, and how much of therefore, and what isn't exactly we can turn off. How many licenses are we paying for out there for stuff that we actually don't need anymore? We only have 3 users in the entire department. Right? Can we get rid of it, etc.? So that's all going to become part of this activity over the summer. So anyway, we have here is an example. I think if you look here, I can't quite see it too well, but if you look at this one, Office 2007, I think that number is something like 250,000. I mean, so you can these reports. That's just a screenshot of a real report. I mean these reports can tell us exactly what I just said. What's the variation in applications that are running out there at the desktop level? And again, because we in VA are able to establish this enterprise-wide view down to the desktop. We don't have the problem of the last mile. We don't have the problem of the fence line of the base post camping station. We can penetrate all the way down there into those desktops and see what's going on. And these are some of the phases ultimately in cybersecurity leading up to situational awareness, which is understanding where we are, not just with our desktop, but with our servers, routers, and all the other intermediate devices between data center and desktop as we kind of go from desktop backwards and work our way back towards the data center. So we actually will wind up with in phase 3 with full situational awareness of that entire computing environment. Again, this being driven, interestingly enough, by our security architecture. For whatever set of cultural reasons, you might want to guess why it started that way. But nonetheless, the reveal a great deal of information is useful broadly for all EA purposes that we talked about earlier, even though the principal drive here initially is secure. And of course, that then is going to produce, by the time we get to that phase of situational awareness, these full laydowns across the entire department, which, again, we're not quite there yet with respect to having the tools and the instrumentation to produce that full view. But as you can see by the desktop, we're pretty far along in a very interesting way with respect to taking a full enterprise view. These are just some of the advantages of that situational awareness once we can get to that. With respect to medical devices, we have established an isolation architecture to, again, prevent either damage to the medical devices or the medical devices damaging what's on our core network by establishing this isolation architecture for medical devices that have embedded computers in them where PII and PHI can reside, sometimes volatile, sometimes in a persistent way. In order to keep that stuff separate and protected, we've actually got those isolation architectures already established. And let's see here. So with respect to progress here, we have a PA security related TRM enhancements starting for this month, which I think I talked enough about the TRM. In April, we initiated looking at business processes that themselves could create vulnerabilities or have issues with respect to remedies for the material weaknesses in the department. We have started in 2009 looking at both as-is to be in a rolling transition plan for cybersecurity since then, updated annually, and IPRM is now the Office of Information Security, by the way. We use that as the basis for building the resourcing plan for the FY 2010 budget, also for the FY 2011 budget. And next week we're going through and using that same information now to do our budget operating plan for 2011, which is our final opportunity to tell Congress how we're going to use our appropriated funds in 2011. Something probably most departments don't have the opportunity to do, but we can actually reshuffle the president's budget right now in the last quarter before the next fiscal year. So that's going to happen also for our 2012 budget as well, number 4. So it's cyclic, right? With respect to the transition plan, this is what you might guess is the foundation for a series of transition plans, and the current one due to OMB is actually due this month. We'll structure it this same way with respect to now what we know from Big Fix, what we know about the desktop, and what it is we've learned in that regard that transition us over to a more efficient, unified, integrated state. Let's see. So there are objectives for 2011 for our enterprise security architecture, promote collaboration, eliminate risk, also very closely aligned to the financial imperatives I just described a minute ago. I think the second bullet's pretty obvious. Let's see. I think I really sort of covered all those via business needs. I think I covered all those with you, right? With respect to vertical connections here, I want to spend a few minutes talking about it because when you let's say the technical reference model, let's pick that as an example. But the temptation here, I think, in lots of instances, is simply to look horizontally here in each of these layers. For example, the technical reference model to look at what do our server farms look like, what variations there in operating systems, all that sort of stuff that you get by our horizontal view of any one of those layers. But the art form here is to also go vertical, to understand if there is an apparent non-value-added variation, let's say, in the number of operating systems we have running. The question is there some business reason why that variation is there? And through the process we're going to use here over the summer, we intend to identify that. So the horizontal synthesis here of an identification of variation is very important. But if there are business reasons for that variation, we fully intend to understand that through the construct that we're going to use over the summer, both to skinny down our environment with respect to our appropriated funds, but also from a cybersecurity perspective to look for vulnerabilities. And I want to say that the VA, this administration has done a very good job, first time in my view, by the way, since I've been in federal government now, I guess something close to 30 years, with about a 3-year hiatus, but other than in federal service. This is the first administration that I've seen that's made a very, very, very strong connection between the strategic plan and the budget. And not only have we made a strong connection between the strategic plan and the budget, the strategic plan actually